What up, what up, what up, everyone? It is Arkey Hodges here, president of the Black Achievement Fund. I am so glad to be back with you all today. I have been away building our New Kemet retreat and residential community. So that has been taking me away from seeing you guys on lots of Sundays. Today's a rainy day, no construction day. So we are going to have a great time today learning about the Black Achievement Fund, but also learning about an unsung hero. Now, we've talked about this gentleman a lot on our platform, Mr. Isaiah T. Montgomery, who is founder of Mount Bayou, which is the oldest municipality in the United States founded by formerly enslaved Africans. And his story is really, really remarkable. However, very few people know about him, even though Mount Bayou and the politics of Isaiah T. Montgomery are the same politics of Booker T. Washington. In fact, he is the person who influenced Booker T. Washington perhaps more than anyone else. A lot of people don't know that in 1890, Isaiah T. Montgomery was the only Black person in the state of Mississippi that was asked to come and be a delegate at the 1890 Mississippi Constitutional Convention. And they asked him because they knew that he was the type of Black leader who was very conservative and was willing to concede white political power and Black disenfranchisement in order to allow progress for places like Mount Bayou. Essentially, after the Civil War and the white Southerners were defeated, they still did not want to integrate or Black people to become a part of white society. That was still absolutely ludicrous for them to accept. And because of that, for 10 years after the Civil War, the federal government had to place U.S. troops all throughout the South to literally protect the lives of Black people against retribution from Southerners who had lost the Civil War and lost all of their fortunes. Okay? Isaiah T. Montgomery comes up, first he's enslaved, and we're going to talk a little bit about that and we're going to read about that. But this young man comes up during a time in which the federal government had abandoned all support of Black people in the South by removing all of the troops that for a decade protected Black people. So by the time of 1890 gets here, this is a time of just absolute terror for Black people. Just think, white people lost the Civil War. 800,000 white men were murdered, maimed, or whatever during the Civil War, more than all of the wars that America has fought in to date combined, okay? So they're reeling from the loss of their sons, their husbands, their fathers, their uncles, their cousins, so on and so forth, all right? That's a very real thing. So not only did your loved one lose his life during the Civil War, y'all lost all your money, all right? The Union armies came and they burnt down all of the most prosperous plantations. They burnt down all of the bridges. They destroyed anything to cripple the Southern economies so that they could win the war. And they were successful. So here you have a South that is completely ravaged by the Civil War. The people who were in power are no longer in power. Their fortunes largely lost because of the war. So you got all of this anger and this resentment against Black people because they're blaming slavery as the reason that their northern brothers decided to wage a war against them and kill fellow white people to protect the lives of Black people. When Black people were enslaved, there was some level of protection for Black lives because you were property. You were owned by someone, and you had a value placed on you, a dollar value. So if someone came and killed you, they had to answer for that dollar value. Now, after slavery is over, after the federal government removes all of the troops that they had placed in the South to protect blacks from white retribution, now white people are determined, and they see this as a sign to reclaim Southern society, reclaim Southern politics, and reclaim white supremacy for white people. From 1877 to 1910, you have a black person being lynched in almost every single day somewhere in the South. This period of time is called, by African American historians have called this period in black history the nadir, Nadir of black history, because this represents the time period in which black Americans, especially those in the South, were the least protected in American history. No longer, if I kill a black person, I have to contend with the fact that he or she belongs to someone and it's a dollar value attached. Now that I kill a black person, they don't belong to no one, there's no dollar attached, and this is exactly what they did. This is the history. So Isaiah Montgomery establishes Mound Bayou within the context of this very volatile, racial, terrorist climate that white people impose on defenseless black people after the federal government left. So we're going to delve deeper into that. And for those of you who are just tuning in, I'm going to give you guys a brief introduction of what the Black Achievement Fund is all about, and then we're going to move into our lesson for today. Okie dokie, here we go. For those of you who are just tuning in, the Black Achievement Fund is a nonprofit 501c3 Black Economic and Community Development Corporation with the simple mission of financing the grand development of Black America and beyond through a simple system of collective economics, or Ujamaa. 10 million black people and our allies, plus $9 a month equals $90 million every single month and $1 billion a year to rebuild black communities. Membership to the Black Achievement Fund is open to anyone who believes in our mission and our guiding principles, regardless of race, religion, political affiliation, or sexual identity. All of our assets are collectively owned, and to date, the Black Achievement Fund has been collecting contributions for a little over 5 years. We currently own 9 acres of land and are raising $75,000 to build on our very first piece of land. So if you have not contributed, or if you would like to contribute again, please go to donorbox.org/pyramid1. And we are almost at $25,000. We're less than $1,000 away from $25,000. So help us get over the $25,000 benchmark. We would greatly appreciate it. Remember, owning this land is not, the land is not a trophy, okay? You don't just buy it and say, hey, we own land. You have to build on the land. So that's what we're raising the capital for right now, to begin the process of building on our land. To talk a little bit more about the Black Achievement Fund and our model, we established the Black Achievement Fund way back in 1996, and we wanted to create an economic model that will truly allow Black people to become economically independent and self-sufficient, so that we could once again begin the process of establishing our own cities as we did during segregation. Okay, as I was just talking about earlier, white Southerners did not want black people to be a part of their community. And black people did not want to be a part of their community. They wanted to be left alone and allowed to establish their own cities where they governed themselves and provided for themselves. And that was the very first leadership approach of our statesmen during the post-Civil War time period. And this is what we're trying to do with the Black Achievement Fund. We're trying to create a sustainable pool of capital to not just finance things on a one-time basis, but to finance our development perpetually. Every single 10 million black people, that's not even a fifth of the community. We just take 10 million, $9 a month, that's 90 million every single month. All right, we paid 55,000 for our first 6 acres of land. Imagine what you could do with 90 million a month. Imagine how much land we could buy every month. And on that land, we could build whatever we want. Schools, hospitals, community centers, cultural centers, museums, all of these things out of our own capital. And what's more is that we have the ability to not just do this here in Georgia, but all across the country. One of the things that we've been teaching on these info sessions is that we did do this over and over and over again. And we've actually blogged a lot of our info sessions in which we share the history of all black towns all across America. And this is our website here. If you go across New Kemet, below you'll see the New Kemet blog. And as you can see, we've also been blogging our construction and development of the New Kemet project. So those of you who own land, those of you who are interested in doing exactly what we're doing, now you have a partner in doing this. And we're trying to educate our community on how it's done by blogging the process. But that is the Black Achievement Fund's mission in a nutshell, to begin the process of financing our own development, all right, without us asking for anything. And now that's not to say that we don't want foundation money, we don't want corporate sponsorship, we don't want government grants, we're not, that we don't care about reparations. We care about all of those things. However, the Black Achievement Fund is saying the only people that we can count on is ourselves when it comes to our own development. That is great to have friends and allies, but we cannot exclusively, as a race of people, rely on the goodwill of another race to ensure our liberation. It has never worked, and we're appreciative of all of our allies who have aided in our progress, but it is not enough, and it will never be enough. And that's why the Black Achievement Fund is here. All right? So if you have not joined, please join. It won't hurt you. It's $9 a month. Just go here, join. Takes you less than 5 minutes. We have individual memberships, gift memberships, honorary memberships, nonprofit, as well as business memberships. Okay? Now, we're going to go and continue our conversation of Isaiah T. Montgomery. Okay? This is part of a new education series that we are about to unveil through Education for Life Academy called the Breaking Barriers African American History Curriculum. This is volume 1. And each of the classes presents an obscure, well, some not so obscure, but I try to present Black Americans who've done extraordinary things in African American history that you may not have heard about. And some you may have heard about, but we talk about elements of their leadership that is not widely discussed or talked about, okay? Like Booker T. Washington, for example. All right, from slavery to self-rule, Isaiah T. Montgomery and the founding of Mound Bayou. I'm going to read the first couple paragraphs to get us started, and then I'll ask some of our members to continue forward. And the curriculum that you see here, volume 1 has 10 classes, presents 10 different heroes or heroines within our culture. And all of the classes look like those that you see in front, and it will be available within the next couple of weeks. All right, so just to give you a context so you'll know where to find this information going forward. All right, Isaiah T. Montgomery, 1847 to 1924, born enslaved on Davis Bend Plantation in Mississippi, was a pioneering figure in Black self-governance and economic independence. His father, Benjamin T. Montgomery, a skilled machinist and landowner, instilled in Isaiah a deep belief in education, enterprise, and community building as tools for Black advancement. After emancipation, Isaiah co-founded Mound Bayou, Mississippi in 1887, an all-Black town designed as a safe haven of self-reliance and dignity for African Americans in the hostile Jim Crow South. Montgomery's vision of racial uplift through economic self-help and communal ownership became a real-world model for Black empowerment. Mound Bayou's success inspired Booker T. Washington, who saw in Montgomery's work a tangible example of his own ideals of industrial education, economic development, and pragmatic accommodation. Washington openly praised Mound Bayou and viewed Montgomery as a living embodiment of the philosophies Washington would later promote on a national stage. Can I get a volunteer?
Sure. Oh, go right ahead. I'll go after you.
Huh?
Mama Gloria, seems like you have the floor.
Oh, okay. I started recognizing.
Yes.
Okay. Recognizing Montgomery's achievement, Booker T. Washington invited him to deliver the keynote address at the National Negro Business League Conference, using Mound Bayou as a showcase of Black entrepreneur excellence. Montgomery's strategy of quietly negotiating with white power structures to protect Black interests also shaped Washington's own approach to leadership, particularly Washington's balancing act of gaining support from both white supremacists and white liberals while advancing Black institutions behind the scenes. Like Washington's
1 second.
Montgomery.
Give me 1 second. So the reason why Booker T. Washington is referred to as the Wizard of Tuskegee was because out of all Black people, all Black leaders before him, he was the first to get the most racist white Southerner, as well as the most liberal Northern industrialist, to give him money for his causes. And when people sat back and saw it in action, they could not understand, how is this happening? But go ahead and continue, Dr. Glory.
Like Montgomery's leadership was heavily criticized at the time for accommodating too much to white supremacy. For example, Montgomery played a leading role in the Mississippi Constitutional Convention of 1890, where he controversially endorsed measures like literacy tests and poll taxes that disenfranchised Black voters as a strategic effort to reduce racial violence and preserve the town's autonomy. In many ways, Montgomery laid the groundwork for Washington's broader philosophy, demonstrating that economic independence and self-governance were not just ideals, but achievable goals, even within the oppressive systems of the post-Reconstruction South. His legacy is complex, but his achievement for the Black community remains significant and deserves renewal attention.
Great, thank you so much. We're going to talk heavily about his role at the 1890 Mississippi Constitutional Convention, where he was the only Black person invited to participate, because his entire legacy for the people that knew him, grew up with him, and was his contemporaries, was mired in this controversy when he was alive. He was, I believe, just 34 years old, or 43 years old when he was elected to be a delegate. And he was charged within this, and I'm going to show you an actual picture because I want you to see the intimidation. It was easy for Black people in 2025 to judge leaders from the past, especially people like Isaiah Montgomery. Now, this is an image of all of the delegates that attended the 1890 Mississippi Constitutional Convention. All right. Now, he was the only Black person. Where do you think he would be centered? At the very bottom, right?
Oh,
Here he is here. Can you see? Can you guys, wait a minute. Can you guys see
that's,
at the
Yeah, I
very
see
bottom?
him.
Okay. That's him. Here he is at the very bottom. All right. Now, imagine being in a courthouse or a state's convention center. All of these white racists in Mississippi are around you, and then they give you the microphone and say, "Okay, darky, do you believe that Black people should be able to vote like white people?" If he would have had the wrong answers, what do you think would have happened to him?
Would have hung him up right then and there.
And the reason why I provided the context of the time period in which he was living, to let our community understand that the choices that these Black leaders had to make, these were not choices that were born without any context. They were choices that involved the literal life and death of the people that they were representing. Okay? There is a book that was written that talks about Isaiah Montgomery's challenge. And it was written by someone named Neil R. McMillan. And we're going to read today an excerpt from Mr. McMillan's book on Isaiah T. Montgomery, because he presents it, I think, very clearly what Mr. Montgomery was up against with this vote. All right, I'm going to start reading, and then I'm going to ask for some volunteers. All right. Isaiah T. Montgomery might be called Mississippi's Booker T. Washington. Though Montgomery was not as famous or as influential, his life and work in many other respects closely paralleled that of the great educator at Tuskegee Institute, a college for Black people in Alabama. And again, I state to you all that Booker T. Washington was influenced almost wholeheartedly by him. It wasn't vice versa. They were both taught by influential white people to be conservatives, safe and sensible African-American leaders who understood that if the emancipated African-Americans and their descendants were to get along in the Jim Crow South, they must go along with racial separation and Black political disenfranchisement. Okay. If Black people were to get along, they had to go along with racial separation and Black political disenfranchisement. These are the exact same things that white racists want right now in 2025. They want Black people to be cast from American society, from American civil society, have they lived somewhere in squalor, and they don't want them to have any voting rights whatsoever. Nothing has changed. Both were regarded by contemporary Black militants, few of whom lived in the South, as faithless collaborators who sold out their people in the darkest hours of post-Civil War radical white racism. Okay? People who didn't live in Mississippi, people who didn't know of a person who was lynched, who didn't have to walk past a lynched body. Those were the people who were heavily criticizing what Mr. Montgomery did. In fact, though Montgomery spent most of his adult life overshadowed by Washington, it was he, not the Tuskegean, who first won public prominence as the architect of an unequal bargain that seemed to trade the civic aspirations of African Americans for the empty white assurance of racial harmony. Half a decade before Washington offered his olive branch, his famous Atlanta Compromise address of 1895, Montgomery delivered up his peace bush, his conciliatory speech to the Mississippi Constitutional Convention of 1890, in which he accepted wholesale black disenfranchisement as the essential, quote, beginning of the end of the great race question. As historians now know, neither Washington nor Montgomery was what he then seemed. Both were in fact complicated pragmatists who were misread by their white admirers and misunderstood by their black detractors. Race statesman or race traitor. Shonda, do you want to pick up here and read this next paragraph?
It will be my pleasure. Thank you. History will remember Montgomery not just as a town builder, a conservative race statesman, end quote, who pursued racial harmony through accommodation. In some respects, he was an unlikely advocate of Black disenfranchisement as a path to peace. He himself had regularly voted since the early days of Reconstruction at Davis Bend when the freedmen first won the right to vote. His father and brother both held minor offices and were very likely the first African Americans to hold public office in Mississippi and perhaps the entire South. After Reconstruction, Montgomery was well known and active in Bolivar County Republican circles, and his beloved Mound Bayou remained an island of Republican loyalty in a sea of white Democrats. He served for a town as the town's mayor, and he later took more than a little pride in the fact that it elected its own public officials. He was elected as a Republican delegate to the Mississippi Constitutional Convention in 1890, and he later accepted a federal political patronage job as a collector of government monies.
Okay, thank you. So here we see that Mr. Montgomery is well aware of how powerful the vote is. And he himself had voted during Reconstruction every single chance he got. So he's not saying he doesn't think black people should have the right to vote at all, as evidenced by Mound Bayou and the fact that they held elected positions for their officials. Does anybody else want to read the next paragraph? Do we have any?
Yeah, I'll take the next paragraph.
Okay. Brother Lou.
Okay. But Montgomery was also an astute politician, political observer, and he understood the realities of power and his time and place. Enfranchised by the 15th Amendment to the United States Constitution and technically allowed an equal opportunity in both vote and hold public office under Mississippi Constitution of 1868. Black people outnumbered white ones in every decade from 1840 to 1940. Clearly, in this Black majority state of Mississippi, the first requirement of unchallenged white rule was Black disfranchisement. Having reestablished white control by force and fraud in 1875, the White Line Democrats, or Redeemers, as they styled themselves, intended to dominate the political life of Mississippi by any means necessary, with accommodating federal government increasingly willing to purchase North-South reconciliation by looking the other way. No prudent Black Mississippian could ignore that fact.
Great. So what we're seeing here is that the federal government, once again, after 1875, with the Tilden-Hayes Compromise, really of 1877, and they decided to remove all the federal troops from the South, the only thing that the South had to do now was disenfranchise Black people, okay, stop them from voting and take over the ballot and thus control of the South all over again. Now, look at the dates that we're talking about here and look at the date we're in right now. Isn't this the exact same playbook that they're using?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Let's look at this. Black people outnumber white ones in every decade in Mississippi from 1840 to 1940. So therefore, the people in Mississippi know that we can't fairly win any election in the state of Mississippi. Right now in America, we're in a situation where white people are no longer the majority population, okay? They know this, and they understand that as we increasingly become the minority in America, we're going to increasingly lose our power by virtue of not having the numbers to win any meaningful election. If we can't win any meaningful election in America, it is just a matter of time before we are going to be at the lowest rung of American society. Because if we're not empowered, can you guys mute whoever's not muted? Thank you. If we're not empowered, if we're not in political power and in control of the budget, of the money of America, and it is left to minorities, to Black people and other people of color, what are they going to do to us? It's going to be big payback time. And this is a real fear that we're witnessing right now in white society, okay? And it started with the election of Barack Obama. We got something that no Black person in our lifetime thought that we would ever see, okay? And that was through support of white liberals. And then right after this historic left-leaning election, we get one of the most racist presidents in American history right after that. So Barack Obama's election signaled a changing of the tide, and it woke a lot of white moderates up. And the Republicans began to stoke that fear. I told you so. We told you so. Pretty soon, they're going to be infiltrating every level of politics within America, and we are not going to be in control. We're not going to have the power to keep white supremacy alive and to maintain an unfair advantage in America, because that's what white power is about. That's what white supremacy is about. It's about maintaining power exclusively for white people. All right. And Isaiah Montgomery, like his father before him, was nothing if not prudent. His father, Ben, chose his battles carefully. Eager to avoid racial conflicts that he could not hope to win, he had made it his lifelong practice to cultivate friendships with influential whites. Ben set white people at ease by downplaying Black political aspirations, by affirming that voting was of doubtful and remote utility to the freedmen. Discussions of the suffrage question, he publicly asserted, are more likely to produce contention and idleness than harmony. These were calculated and soothing words, suggesting to white leaders, as one approving white newspaper editor put it, that Ben was a, quote, sensible darky and a good citizen who attends to his own business and does not dabble in politics. Isaiah, too, was a skillful actor in the ceremony of submission required of any African American who would stay right with white people. This is a white man's country, Montgomery said more than once. Let him run it. His advice to Black Mississippians who still demanded a citizen's right to vote was equally direct. The farther you stay away from the white people's politics, the better. It was not surprising then that Montgomery, alone among Black Republicans, was allowed to represent his race and his party at the State Constitutional Convention of 1890. He was an elected delegate from Bolivar County, of course, but even casual observers of the Mississippi political scene could no longer have illusions about the integrity of the ballot box. According to one prominent judge, J.J. Krishman, himself a leading member of the Constitutional Convention, it was, quote, no secret that there has not been a full vote and a fair count in Mississippi since 1875. So here you got a white man himself at the convention confirming what Black people already knew, what Isaiah T. Montgomery already knew, that ever since the federal government abandoned us, the white South have been cheating their way back into power, and they've been using the ballot box, they've been using the Ku Klux Klan, they've been using lynching, the mob, as a source of, quote unquote, putting Black people in the South back in their place. And that was servitude and subsistence among to white people. And in 2025, I'm living in Atlanta, and I still see remnants of this fear of white people. I'm scared to go down there because y'all gonna be by yourself. What you think them white people gonna do? What did they do to Rosewood? What did they do to fear? Fear. So I say to those people, I say, so what you're saying to me is that white people have sufficiently scared you from being great. They have sufficiently scared you into accepting the place in American society that they want for you. So you're not going to fight to reestablish independent, Black governed cities and towns like we did before because you are simply afraid in 2025. And this is one of the reasons why I went back to this class on Mount Bayou, to show that over 100 years, over 125 years have elapsed. And the terrorism that white people did to Black people then still reverberates in the bones of Black people in 2025. We're still scared to go get a gun and it's legal. We're still scared to carry a gun because we feel in our minds, even though it's legal, white folks don't like us having guns and I'm more likely to get killed if I have a gun. This is in 2025. And this is why history is so important. Here we go. Who wants to read this next paragraph, beginning with once assembled?
Can you hear me?
Yep, you got it.
Okay, I'm having technical difficulties here. Once assembled, the convention's overriding purpose was plain to see. Quote, we came here to exclude the Negro, end quote, S.S. Calhoun, the body's president, announced. Quote, nothing short of this will answer, end quote. Montgomery was assigned to the Committee on Elective Franchise, and he spoke eloquently in favor of and voted for a measure to, quote, purify the ballot, end quote, by restricting it to literate adult males, those he called the stable, thoughtful, and prudent element of our citizens. Another quote. The burden of a literacy restriction, as he well knew, would fall most heavily on a people so recently freed from slavery. But he also knew that through education, literacy could eventually be eradicated, and he dared to hope that in the meantime, voter requirements would apply equally to both races, and that such disfranchisement would come to the Negro would come, quote, because he is ignorant, end quote, not, quote, because he is Black, end quote. He was then just 43 years old, but it would prove to be his defining moment and the single most controversial act of his long and complicated life.
This was powerful. I'm gonna give you the chance to read, but I just want to stop for a second.
Mm-hmm.
This is powerful This, once again, is showing you how white racists work together. After the Civil War, they never stopped working to regain power and regain control over the Southern politics of every single Southern state. They never stopped. And here we see them, not even 50 years, already back on top. Okay? Now, right open, I mean, they're saying this out loud. We came here to exclude the Negro. The body's president announced. The president. So there's intimidation all in the air. Now, here it says, the burden of a literacy restriction, as he well knew, will fall most heavily on a people so recently freed from slavery. But he also knew that through education, illiteracy could eventually be eradicated. So here he in his head is thinking, okay, they think they're slick. They want to put these restrictions in front of the ballot to prevent black people from voting. I get it. I understand that. I'm going to go along with it so that they don't go throughout the South killing black people. So it seems like there's some type of compromise between us. But I know that they're not going to be able to keep black people from voting because we're going to no longer be illiterate. And if this is going to be the litmus test for you keeping black men from the ballot, it's only going to be short-lived anyway. He didn't think in his mind that they were going to just discriminate even against people like himself, who was more literate than the people who were checking the literacy of the potential voter. But he quickly saw that they had no intention of honoring allowing black men to vote, even if they proved that they were literate. And that is why his vote is so controversial, is because you believed in the goodwill of white people. And even if you didn't believe in the goodwill of white people, you had no business negotiating black rights. Black people didn't invite you to to the Constitution to represent them. White people invited you, not your community. So you had no authority to speak on behalf of the black community in that capacity. So that is one of the that's his biggest mistake. Ms. Faith, you want to read the next paragraph?
But why? Why was Montgomery elected as a delegate? Well, you just answered that. Why was he willing to serve? Why did he support disenfranchisement? Disenfranchisement.
This I know is a tough
His
one.
presence at the convention is perhaps most easily explained. His conservative ideas were well known to powerful white political leaders eager to point to his example as proof that the convention was fair and that black people too favor white supremacy. In a word, Montgomery provided cover, a measure of legitimacy as Mississippi enacted the legal measures to subvert the 15th Amendment.
Awesome. I mean, and that sums it right up. And they do this right now. The same playbook. Look how the Republican Party courts black leaders who are self-hating and are all too willing to vote against black interests. Look at all of the ones that they presented and look at the votes of all of those people. You get a Clarence Thomas, Supreme Court justice.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So we see this as part of the playbook, and because we are so detached from history, Because we don't get to teach our own children history, our own children, we miss the strategy. You know something ain't right, but you can't connect it to anything. This is why teaching our own history is so important. Do we have someone who want to read the next paragraph? All
I'll
right.
read.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, we on that Montgomery's own, right? Okay. Montgomery's own motivations are more complex and have defied easy answers for more than a century. Some conservative Black contemporaries applauded his tone of racial sacrifice, his singular act of statesmanship, but others recoiled in shock and horror, dismissing him as a great disappointment, a traitor, the Judas of his people. It was said that he was either so blinded by ambition or so eager for white approval that he traded his vote for the empty favor of a seat at the convention, or that he bought immunity from white interference in the affairs of Mound Bayou with the coin of Black suffrage, or more frequently, that his actions were simply inexplicable, quote unquote, and quote unquote unfathomable mystery wrapped in a quote unquote jangle of contrarieties.
That's a good one. Yeah.
what
So
what were
here,
your thoughts?
this is the Black community's assessment of this. And again, I firmly believe that he had no right accepting the invitation of the convention to represent Black people when Black people didn't ask him to go on their behalf. That's where I think he went wrong at altogether. Okay, he could have politely not accepted the invitation. So that's why I fear he went wrong by accepting the invitation and speaking on behalf of people who never gave them their authority to speak on their behalf. Let's continue, and then we'll open it up to conversation. I'll start with this next one. Yet, examined in the context of his life and his times, his role at the convention seems neither treasonous nor puzzling nor inconsistent. By supporting the white supremacist initiative, he offered a way to end the grave dangers of racial conflict, bridge an ever-widening and deepening racial chasm, and inaugurate an era of progress. The Black right to vote in Mississippi, as he reasoned, had already been nullified by electoral fraud and by physical and economic coercion. By giving away rights they could no longer exercise anyway, Afro-Mississippians might gain the personal security and economic freedom necessary to advance themselves, thus giving a man's chance, having been, allowed to prove their worth through right living, hard work, and practical education. The former enslaved and their descendants could expect someday to re-enter the body politic as equal citizens, free from the burden of racial prejudice. So what Booker T. Washington thought was that, let's placate the white supremacists. Let them have their communities, let them have the ballot, so long as they give us the opportunity to start our own self-governing towns and gonna leave us alone. So long as they're going to allow us to govern ourselves, be self-sustaining, run our own farms, run our own affairs, run our own society. Why do we want to be integrated with them anyway? This is the thought process I think Montgomery and others of his ilk were operating under. We don't have the power to secure the Black vote anyway. So what if I came into this convention and said, absolutely not. We want full access to the ballot, and all of these measures are just here to restrict Black men from being able to vote. What if he would have said that at that convention? What would have happened? Would they have said, okay, you're right? Or you may not have even heard of him after that. So once again, this is the context in which these men were operating under. Or
I
so,
take it. Oh,
go ahead, Dr. Gorey.
or so Montgomery dared to hope. It was a long shot, but it was, in all fairness, the only shot Montgomery thought he had. The suffrage restrictions of the new Constitution, as he informed the Northern newspaper just 2 weeks after his fateful vote, did not wholly suit me, but it was the best that could be done. We had to take the best that we could get. Of course, Montgomery's peace brush, his fearful sacrifice laid upon the burning altar of liberty, but was not the beginning of the end of the race problem. It did not, as he had hoped, open the way in Mississippi for political divisions upon some basis other than that of color or race. Clearly, his faith in ultimate white good intentions was misguided. But to suggest that Montgomery's strategy of giving up to gain was fundamentally ill conceived is not to prove that he had other realistic options. In time, Montgomery has second thoughts about his sublime sacrifice of 1890. He lived another 34 years, long enough to admit privately, though never in public, to a sense of betrayal, to a recognition that white supremacists in Mississippi sought nothing less than a retrogression of the Negro back towards serfdom and slavery. In a letter to Booker T. Washington, he acknowledged that white talk of pure government was a sham, that only armed federal interventions could restore colorblind democracy to Mississippi. To have said that openly would have been to speak against the very grain of his being, not least it would have risked swift and certain retributions for himself and his town. But by remaining publicly silent, he opened the way to the misunderstanding and the calumny that have dogged his reputation for more than a century. When Montgomery died in 1924, he was eulogized by a conservative white planter politician, Walter Silvers Sr., and laid to rest in a tomb paid for by white subscriptions. Outside his circle of family and friends, however, he was largely unmourned good. But by that date, he was, in the words of a Northern missionary, more hated by Negroes than any Mississippian of his race. Glad of that.
All right. Last thoughts and speculations. Isaiah Thornton Montgomery's story tells us, if it tells anything, that human lives can only be examined in the larger context of their own times. Montgomery was assuredly not a man for all seasons. He did not speak of aspiring freedmen of his own generation who still found hope for full citizenship in the forgotten promises of Reconstruction. Nor did he speak for unborn generations who, in a more opportune age after World War II, would help pull down the morally corrupt house of Jim Crow. Rather, like most other mortals, he was a man of his own era, in his case, a dark era of diminishing Black opportunities. Among the earliest of the great Black accommodators, he came of age amid the confusions of the American Civil War and Reconstruction, and he spent the middle and later years of his life awash in a rising tide of radical white racism. I'm going to end there. Again, this is part of our Breaking Barriers new education series on African American history. And I just want to open it up to you all who are on the Zoom. And if you see some comments in the YouTube, please make sure that you share them. But the question that I want to ask you all, Sister Shonda, you asked me, and I'm going to turn it back on you. how do you assess the life of Mr. Isaiah T. Montgomery? What are your thoughts?
I'm kind of confused because he was an Uncle Tom in a sense, quote unquote, right? But he believed that the building this sense of trust and not being able to recognize that there is now non-melanated rage happening. 20 years. So I while you were speaking about the 15th Amendment, or we were reading about the 15th Amendment, I Googled to see what is the 15th Amendment. I wanted to just double check that it was the one that gave us the right to vote. It was established in 1870. So here he is in the convention of 1890. That's 20 years. And there's, again, non-melanated rage about us being free, and then the disenfranchisement of us not having anything, no rights of none. And I was wondering, I was like, how, and my question in chat was about Booker T. Washington, but how did he acquire Mount Bayou? Like, how was he able to build Mount Bayou? That's
Because
what's confusing.
basically, so that's another part of the class that we didn't get into, but
Okay.
the class does explain. But he had money. When
Oh.
he was enslaved, his father was the head of the plantation. His father was allowed to operate his own store, general store, on the plantation. Okay. So when he was born, he inherited all of the privileges that his father had on the plantation. His father was able to go to the plantation's library and read whatever he want. And obviously he taught his sons and daughters how to read as well. And even Isaiah Montgomery, his children went to Oberlin College, and they, were being college educated during a time when the masses of majority of white people weren't even literate. So I guess when you think about, once again, what's happening here, he's seeing the degradation of the South to complete terrorism. So it's one thing to say he's an Uncle Tom, but I pose this question. What if he would have said what you think he would have said? Tell me what you think would have been the results.
Yes, definitely. As you pointed in this info session, his life would be been taken, easily lynched, all of that, massacred, all kinds of ways, decapitated, just massive torture, just because he was that bold to get up there and say no. But of course, he had to play along. But it's good to know that he came from money and capital and education because of his father being a businessman. So what this lesson also demonstrates to me is that the necessity to have a business mind set to have that independence for us and for us to really have freedom, right, and economic freedom. Like we're gonna have to build on our own with some ally support, but we can do it with our own capital.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll learn more about how they really built in Mount Bayou with the capital and whatnot, the money. Will that
Many
be something
people argue, well, look at this argument. What if he had said what we wanted him to say during that convention? Do you think that would have had any consequences for the town of Mount Bayou?
Yes, they would have been burnt down.
Well, but it's 155 years later, and we right back in the same place. Actually, I think we are in a worse place now than back then. At least they had hope that whatever was being done, it was going to be for the good. So that's why they kept doing it. But
They kept
to
doing
me,
it.
it's getting worse.
No, I mean, I think that you're saying what Mr. Montgomery saw. He's saying that this is getting worse. This is not getting better. After the Civil War, the federal government had the military all throughout the South protecting us. We had freedmen's bureaus to go to if some white people threatened us, try to cheat us, and all of those things. So he was elected during Reconstruction to public office. And after 1877, the Hilton-Hayes Compromise, Black Reconstruction was over. The federal government abandoned Black people, all right? They removed all the troops from the South and allowed lynchings and mob rule to take over. So this is the climate in which Montgomery founds Mound Bayou as a refuge away from white terror in Mississippi, of all places. So he's saying we have to do something, or we're going to just be slaughtered in Mississippi. But the federal government is no longer here to protect us. They've turned a blind eye. So do we try to negotiate with the white power structure so that we can build our own in peace? Or do we go head to head with them without having the support of the federal government and try to battle white supremacy on our own? This is what he was looking at. And it's easy for us now to say, oh, hell no, that was Uncle Tom. He should have never done that. This is what he was faced with. I can go and be defiant and say, no, we want the full vote. No Black person will ever hear it. It ain't gonna ever be stricken in the record in that convention because he would have been gone. And with him gone and no other leader who white people believe they could negotiate with, what is to say that they wouldn't have done to Mound Bayou what they did to Tulsa, what they did to Rosewood, what they did to Wilmington? Who were defiant? Right now, today, Mound Bayou still exists. It's a shell of itself, but it still exists. It still has structure. The communities that defied white races are gone. The people who defied white supremacists when they came to the America, all of the Native people, they're gone. They've been effectively exterminated. And we don't like to use that word, but that's exactly what happened to the Native people. When you hear about the Native American casinos here and there, so on and so forth, I hate to break it to you, but a lot of those people are not no Native Americans. Those are white people who are $5 Indians, paid to become members of these tribes, married women within the tribes, but these are not indigenous American people. Imagine how many people were in this country prior to the European arrival. All of those Native Americans from the East Coast to the West Coast, I ask you, where are they? Who speaks for them? Where are they in the history books? Black people have done some.
We need another way. We just need another way. And I think it's even if you got to die. I mean, what are we doing now? We're just allowing them just to do anything. And the reading is on the wall. We are not headed for anything good. They are lying. They know how now to go and cheat on the vote. Now they're saying, I heard them talking about how this next time, what it's a mid-election or whatever, Democrats got to get a certain amount so we can get it right. Well, you can talk all that all you want to. All they got to do is push buttons, ask AI and all of them, and they're going to get what they need. I'd rather go down fighting.
I hear what you're saying, but what I want to say this. Was that all that Isaiah Montgomery did? Because he is the founder of Mound Bayou. He did create a self-governing Black town that didn't have to worry about white violence. Won't no white police officers in Mound Bayou. So he was saying to black people, look what I created. I created a self-governing town where don't no white people come in here for nothing. We have elections, we have our own mayor, our own aldermen, our own city council. We have all of this. We have electric lights, we have sewage. So he was saying, we don't really need these people. That we can
But
do
is that
better.
an honor when you get it kissing butt? Because
No,
that's the
no,
only
no.
way he got it.
And that's
He
what we
had to say and do exactly what they wanted him to say and do.
right. But my question to you again is looking at the greater context. And what I'm saying is that it's easy for you, Miss Gloria, in 2025 to be this defiant. Would you have been that defiant in 1890 in Mississippi? That's the question that I have for you.
Or I would have gone
100%.
someplace else if I had to go in the wilderness. I just couldn't, I can't sit around kissing ass. I just can't
But you
do it.
got
I've never done it.
But
I
you
got
gotta
in a
remember,
lot of
Mama
trouble.
Gloria,
I've sat in some police stations because I wouldn't kiss butt.
you gotta remember,
No.
Mama Gloria, he had his own
Well,
capital. He had his own money. So he
exactly.
really founded this town with our own capital. Just like what we doing with the Black Achievement Fund and New
Exactly.
Kemet and Pharaoh's Road. We got our own capital. It's self-sustaining.
Well, I think we all, as far as teaching history, what Brother Arkey is doing, I think that's just got to be stepped up. I mean, we just can't give up on our younger people, and because they don't know about this stuff, and we just got to create schools and some type of learning environment where we can constantly teach the truth to them. I think that's the only way we're going to survive this, or as a race,
Yep. I agree wholeheartedly, Brother Lou. The very fact that we are increasingly learning more and more about who we are, about our
Yeah.
history. I think people of my generation and the older generations, I sincerely think that we in our minds think that the kids going to school in 2025 are learning even the things that we learned, which wasn't
Right.
much.
Exactly.
We're learning even less.
Less.
We can all say, people in my generation and the older generation can all talk about how many black teachers they had, right? But now we know that in 2025, only 7% of all public school teachers are black.
Yeah.
Only 2% black men. So now we also know that they've changed the curriculum. They've reverted and have taken more and more and more stuff out. So what I'm saying to our community is, what are we doing as a community to combat this? Because all of our leadership,
I agree with that.
all of our leadership is still political or religious.
Right.
That's it.
That's it. And both of these are parts of the established order. Okay, the U.S. government, the same government that abandoned black people, that forced Montgomery into that position.
Yes.
Did you hear Dr. Hagen today?
Mm-hmm.
He came in there proving that all this mess we know is a lie. It's a big lie. They fixed it. They were planning with, you think about that doggone COVID. Years before, they had done the math to see what they needed to do to get us here. And when it didn't go exactly as they wanted to, they just changed it. They knew how to go in there and do those computers and get them like they wanted them to be. And they're there and there. They're this close to taking over America. And when they do, and if they do, it's going to be just like it was in slavery.
Well, the question is for black people is, when do we begin to pivot from the strategies that we used during the civil rights movement that no longer work? And
Exactly.
that's with the Black Achievement
That's
Fund.
the key.
And it's important for us to see parallels in history, because this ain't new. This is only new because we don't know history. That's the only reason why feels new.
Mhm.
But our people have gone through far worse terrorism than we can't even begin to even compare what we're dealing with right now. I mean,
But look who they put there to do the voting. They were thinking that way back there when we were saying, well, maybe he won't be like that. Or maybe we had everything in front of us. No black person should have gone in there and voted for this man because he told you what he was going to do. He took 4 years and showed you what he was going to do. But they had their mind on the goal. And that was to make sure he got in there so they could take all of this stuff away. And look, in 2020, I owe $52,000 for my school loan. They told me if you keep paying, you only owe 17. In 2023, they said there's a new thing has come out. The save went away. So don't pay any more money because it's got to go to court first. This week right here, not only have you're gonna have to pay that all that money, they add an interest to it. You know they were thinking it way back there. But
But the problem is, Dr. Gloria, this becomes the dilemma of black leaders like
Brainwashing continues.
right. He was saying you can't believe them. You got to build your own.
Right.
So on the one hand, he's saying to the white people, all right, forget black people voting. But on the other hand, he's telling black people and showing them, start your own town.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, one of the things that we didn't discuss, but this is part of the class, is that they had award-winning cotton, corn, everything they grew was award-winning, okay? Statewide, every single year. You can look it up. So what he was saying and what he knew was that we had the capacity to build our own cities that have every single thing that we need. So why are we so invested in trying to become part of white communities and share political power with white people when we can have our own political power in our own societies, in our own towns? So this is why this is so complicated, because it's easy for somebody to look and say, oh, he was an Uncle Tom. Mm-hmm. But he's double talking. He's saying one thing, but he's doing the absolute opposite. Booker T. Washington did the same thing. He publicly promoted accommodation to white supremacists, but then he privately financed efforts for enfranchising black people. He sent ministers to Paraguay to see whether or not they could buy a plot of land to establish our own cities in Paraguay. He put money in the Negro Business League and had Jewish people buy property, had white people buy property from Jews in Harlem so that black people can start owning apartment buildings and stuff in Harlem. This was what these guys were doing behind the scenes. You know, so I just wanted to bring that out, and I wanted to have this conversation because when you're studying history, it's so easy for us to put our contemporary minds within a historical context. You have to really try your very best to put yourself in that historical moment. And that's one of the issues that came up with W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington, why they were button heads. Booker T. Washington was saying, sir, I was born a slave. I was born around the most violent, ruthless white people you can ever imagine. You were born in Massachusetts around liberal white people. You were raised around white people. You didn't have to experience prejudice, slavery. You never saw anyone lynched. So how can you speak for a strategy for people down here when you know nothing of the context? I come from this. I know these people. You don't. So it's easy for you to talk all of that smack about what we're doing here while you in Massachusetts, free from any type of racial violence. Okay. So
but think about what else you were saying about they can, they're saying like, well, you can have it. Oh, but since I came down here to Florida, I have found so many places where black people bought their own thing and they came and took it away. I think it's about the mindset. We don't understand who the enemy is. We don't know who they are. Their mind is not thinking like our mind. So that's why we keep building up and they go back down because we don't know who they are.
And I think we do know who they are. I think the problem is that the people who do know they are don't have power. Okay? The
Mm-hmm.
Pan-Africanist leadership, they clearly know who these people are. They clearly know.
Exactly.
But do they have power? Do they have wealth to do anything? And that's what this is ultimately about. Okay? You know that Michael Jordan's going to come down the court and do blah, 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 blah. The question is, can you stop him? Can you stop them? So for us as Black people, we have to know history and be informed by history and share the tactics that we see being employed against us to be able to show these parallels. But if we're not the ones teaching our children, if we're the only ones on these types of platforms and the kids are playing video games, kids are on social media, but the parents, the grandparents, we up here having these conversations. Meanwhile, the schools that our children are going to are completely whitewashed. And what are we doing as Black people to change any of this? When I look
Building up their business, taking our money, giving it to them so they can get bigger.
Yep.
That's what we're doing.
Yep.
Yep.
So we're here at the Black Achievement Fund trying to change the narrative. And I have sympathy
And
for.
we keep this going, we will change it. I think we need strong Black leaders to form more think tanks, like like yourself, and really come up with some ideas on how to solve some of these problems. Because hey, it's up to us. We can't depend on nobody else.
Yeah, Brother Luke. Yeah, well, again, here at the Black Achievement Fund, we have the solutions. It is about being present. Presently, we are presently progressing, right? It's not that we will change. We are changing the narrative. Not that we try to change. We are changing the narrative. The narrative is changing now as we speak. Thank you, Brother Arkey, for that call to action to have the children here. Yes, these sessions are learning lessons. Yes. Pull them off them devices, them games, have them sit just like how we doing, engage with it. We're on mute. We can have little sidebar conversations about it at the same time. You get what I'm saying? Have them read the language, have them read the context of it so they can gain comprehension. Yes, great. And so again, the Black Achievement Fund, we have the solutions. There are many think tanks. The issue is, and the problem comes, there is no execution, there is no action behind the words. After the words comes the action, and just like Brother Arkey said, we gotta get the power. It's the power, it's the leverage of power.
Yep. And it's about institutionalizing things as well. When we talk about education, one of the things that we're doing here with the Black Achievement Fund, I don't just have these sessions as one-off sessions, but we try to codify these lessons so that you can go and teach it yourself. Here is the class, right? Members will have access to this class right here. Now, we make it so that it's easy for you to just go have this class as a part of your, you may have a study group, you may have a book club with your nephews, whoever you mentor. But moving beyond just talking about these things and knowing that we have to lead through action. We have to lead through action. Okay, there's no Black curriculums, well, then create one. What
I'm
is
working on one.
all of these people with all of these degrees, all of this education, we've been complaining for how long about curriculum. And then when we create the curriculum, people don't go on it.
Right.
So we have to move beyond talk.
Yes, sir.
Because the rest of the world, other groups, they're not just talking, they're at work. They're at work, they're in committees, they're at work, and the results speak for themselves. That's the difference. So everyone, to access this, and there's a quiz that you can take on this as well. Go to educationforlifeacademy.com. You can see it up here now, /Isaiah T. Montgomery. This is not the Standing on the Shoulders of Giants curriculum, so it is not going to be free, but it will be discounted for Black Achievement Fund members. And right now, while I am piloting the curriculum, it is available free of charge. So please take advantage of it while it is free of charge. You can simply just go to educationforlifeacademy.com/Isaiah T. Montgomery, and it will take you to this. And if you take the quiz right now and you pass the quiz, you will receive from me a certificate of achievement from Education for Life Academy with our seal and everything mailed to you. So I challenge you all to take it a step further and take the quiz. All right. We have our monthly members meeting today at 4 p.m. It is not live streamed on our YouTube channel. So if you would like to come and learn more about the organization, please feel free to do so at the same Zoom code 332-802-6097. Thank you all so much for all of your support. Please make sure that you share this as many times as possible and you like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube, Instagram, and our Facebook channels. All right. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
See you soon at 4. Black Achievement Fund hug.
Right.
Together we rise.